So the next phase is just finishing this up. These pieces, once again, I have to remember these I'm thinking of are separate planks of wood. So the cool thing is I can just go in, select these, and I'm lining it up so that I'm not grabbing anything but these pieces here. So I've got this beam, that beam, this one, and this one. And the cool part is that I don't even have to planar map these. All I have to do is just say separate it from the rest of them and unfold them. So I'm just going to say create UV shell, which separates them. There they are. Oops, and you know what? There is one thing. There's this part right here I have to cut because they're still connected right there. That's okay. So now I will just go in because I could unfold it, and actually it gives me that, but it's a little wonky right there. So I'm just going to grab this edge, these interiors, and then I'm going to grab the outside. Actually, I don't need to do that, just that one. Cool. So I have those, and I'm going to cut them. And you see now they're all different colors. And now let's try unfold. There they are, all separated. Which also separates this guy. And now all we have to worry about is the top and this border edge down here. Now this one's a little bit of an interesting one. So what I'm going to do is I want to separate. Typically, if this had a corner, it would be much easier, just like right here. But I'm going to separate the top and the sides from this bottom piece. So guess what? I'm just going to use my little friend, that 3D cut and sew. Let me get up close, double click, and you see it's just grabbing so I can cut along and separate that. And that's a separate piece. And I can't unfold the top because there's no way for it to open this up without cutting the corners. So grab corner, 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 corner. Now I could easily have been grabbing the edges and then hitting cut, grabbing the edges and hitting cut, but this is just a lot faster. And it's a nice little tool, but either one of those would work. So now that I have that, these guys can actually open up on the sides. I can just go in, grab all these, whoops, hello. Grab all these shells. I have to use the move tool to do it. Actually grab these UVs here and say unfold, and now they are all unfolded and put. But you see it's a mess. It's all over. And if I try to squeeze some of these in, some of these are going to be bigger than others. So I'm going to show you a nice, quick, easy way to get these in the 0 to 1, and it'll look really cool. So what we do is we go to where it says Arrange and Layout. And there's an option down here for Layout. So if I hold down Shift, left mouse button, here are some settings that you want to adjust. Okay. So this is Shift Layout to get the options. What I want to do is turn on Preserve 3D Ratios. And what this is going to do is make sure that if something, in other words, if something, let's say I have this one, and I scale it up huge, and you could see the texture is really dense there, and some areas are going to be like, oh, I'll grab these, and then I scale them, and oops, I have to make sure I get all of them. Make that small so that the textures would be totally high res on one and blurry on another, and we want these all consistent. So that's where we say preserve 3D ratios. I'm going to say texture map size of whatever texture I'm planning. I usually just leave it at 2K, but sometimes I'll do 1K, 1024. And a shell padding is how many pixels between these do I want there to be when it lays them out. And the reason I want it to be spaced out and not touching is because textures can bleed from one UV shell to another. And yeah, shell transform, get all that set. That looks good. It's the same thing that I had previously. And now if I hit layout, oops, I have to get all of them actually, and say layout, it fits them in there. But you'll notice they're all rotated in all kinds of ways. So let me just go into there. If I say also rotate shells and then lay them out. And that's a little better, but they're at these weird angles I don't like. So I'm just going to say orient shells and now layout. And now look how nicely packed all of those are. And if I want to make sure they're lined up, just hit orient shells. And what that does is it makes these shells fit more 90 degrees. And it really saves some good space. And if we zoom in, we can see there's about 6 pixels of space between all of them. And what you'll notice is that all of these UVs, all the texture coordinates are exactly the same size. I don't have like huge squares on one and small on the other. Everything is nice and tightly packed. I'm utilizing all the texture space I want, and everything's looking good. So just to recap, you can either use the edge tool to cut, to select the edges you want, and then hit cut. Or you can use my little friend, the 3D cut and sew, which you can also sew things up with, and we'll talk about sewing things up in a second. And what that basically is that if I have, let's say I accidentally cut something off that wasn't supposed to be, okay? I'm just gonna control right mouse to shell, just to grab the shell, move it over here so you can see it, and turn off the texture for a second. So let's say I cut this and I accidentally want to stitch it back. So I'm going to cut that, and now you see it's a separate shell. And I could move that, but I go, oh man, I want this all one piece. It's supposed to be one piece, and I want fewer shells. So I can go into edge mode, right click, go to edge mode, select that edge, and you notice it highlights the edge it's supposed to be connected to. And now I could just say, oh, so, but that extends it out, which messes up the texture. So I don't want to just sew it together and then meet in the middle or to one to the other. I want to move this whole piece to this one. And that's where we would just go, instead of sew, just say stitch together, and then it moves that piece. And now I can just grab the whole thing and put it back. Oops, not you. To where it's supposed to be, which is right there, inside there. So that's how you cut, and you also stitch things together, because sometimes you'll cut things you don't want, and then that works out pretty well.